In video games, there are often mysteries to uncover, the lore of a Souls game, or who killed the victim in Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper. Oh, that's probably obvious, that's not so much a mystery. But sometimes, mysteries become meta. Mysteries not tied to the story of the game or the world of the game, but mysteries that transcend the games they are a part of, bleeding into the real world to keep me awake at night. I'm talking about things like Minecraft's Herobrine that dominated the internet some 10 years ago. Blimey, I'm old. Myths and stories perpetuated by YouTube content and Chinese whispers. But the thing with most of these mysteries is that they're solved. We know Herobrine isn't real. He can't hurt you. Ah! Fuck off! But there is one mystery that continues to elude me. One mystery I've never seen talked about. And that mystery is Goblin's Bar from Final Fantasy VII Remake. To give some important context, Goblin's Bar is a location first seen in Final Fantasy VII from 1997 on the PlayStation 1. The first time we see this building is during the very opening scene. As the camera pans back from Aerith, we get a nice shot of this bar in a clearly popular district of the Sector 8 upper plate in Midgar. We see the same area later on after destroying the first reactor, but the building has been entirely wrecked. This is where Cloud meets Aerith for the first time. These are the only two times in which Goblin's Bar appears in the original Final Fantasy VII. Not much is known about the bar, in fact, pretty much nothing at all. The grammar of the title, being Goblin's Bar, seems to imply it's goblin-themed, or perhaps has lots of goblins roaming free, like somewhat of a cat cafe for the Final Fantasy VII universe, potentially. Of course, this is all entirely conjecture, and we don't really know the truth behind the name, but this is not the mystery I'm speaking on. You may have thought that this was merely an unexplained detail, and while it is, it's not the central focus of this video, but more exposition is needed before we can explore what lies beneath the surface of a seemingly innocent bar. The next time we'd see Goblin's Bar would be in the PlayStation Portable spin-off of Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII. Sector 8 features heavily in this game, with it being the home of the Shinra HQ that Zack Fair works at. You often find yourself tracking down Loveless Avenue and past the Goblin's Bar itself. The interesting thing here, however, is the changing grammar on the sign of the bar. There is now an apostrophe between the Goblin and the S. Goblin's Bar. Using the apostrophe denotes the bar is owned by either a goblin or someone with the name Goblin. It's not something we can determine, it's not physically possible. However, we do know goblins do exist in the original Final Fantasy VII, although are not present in Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII. In the original Final Fantasy VII, however, they are wild and feral. Goblin Island is a large forested island in Final Fantasy VII located on the edge of the world's eastern hemisphere. Native to the land are goblins, a race of fighters who dwell in the forests. From them, the player can obtain the Xeon Nut, a crucial item in advanced chocobo breeding. Goblins also teach the enemy skill Goblin Punch. That's what the wiki page tells us on the matter. It could be possible that a well-domesticated goblin who managed to integrate into human society was able to start up a bar. It would certainly bring customers, the bar owned by a goblin, or multiple goblins as the case may be. Potentially, it was a Shinra experiment gone wrong, maybe in the vein of Red 13. Shinra could have been experimenting on goblins, and perhaps their reaction to Genova cells, rather than improving physical attributes like with soldiers, enhances brain power and intelligence, allowing for a goblin escapee to flee and start their own bar. There is nothing in Crisis Core that delves deeper into what this bar is exactly, however, you do get a nice close look at it, allowing you to take in the sign in all of its glory. We also get to see it in the final cutscene of Crisis Core that remakes the opening of the original Final Fantasy VII, the cutscene that ultimately gave life to the remake project. Now, a lot of time would pass. Of course, after the destruction of Midgar during Meteor Fall and the livestream converging on it, there is never a point in Advent Children, Dirge, On the Way to a Smile, or The Kids Are Alright where we'd get to see or read about the bar. With us still knowing little to nothing about it, we'd have to wait a while before another entry would show up, set in a period of time where the bar would still be standing strong. 2015 rolled around, and we got the announcement for Final Fantasy VII Remake, a chance to once again visit Goblin's Bar. Maybe with an entry like this, a full-on remake that acts as a way to delve deeper into the original Final Fantasy VII, we'd finally get to learn more about this so far empty and hollow establishment. The release finally rolled around 5 years later. In 2020, we got our hands on this game, and it was a blast. But the story aside, the wonderful game mechanics aside, there was something more important. because coming up on Loveless Avenue after destroying the Sector 8 reactor, we'd find nothing. Goblin's bar was not here. You can look around all you want, believe me, I've tried, but the bar is gone, replaced with Costa del Sol Bar. Robson's is still here, the Loveless Theatre, where they seemingly only put on performances of the critically acclaimed play Loveless, is still here, but Goblin's bar, this mysterious and enigmatic location, is absent. And this begs the question, why? This is the mystery I've been wondering about. This is the mystery that keeps me awake at night. This is the mystery that will never leave me. It's my burden to carry. There is, of course, the possibility that there is a lore reason here. Maybe Costa del Sol Bar is a front for the true Goblin's bar behind the facade. Maybe, if it is run by super intelligent Goblin escapees from a Shinra facility, they'd not want to draw attention by calling it Goblin's Bar, and so went with a name that would draw little attention. However, to those in the know, the true Goblin's Bar would lie inside. Perhaps they work to rise up against Shinra, and it's a mirror parallel for Avalanche working from inside 7th Heaven. Maybe in part 3 of the Remake trilogy, when we return to Midgar, we meet up with the Goblin Resistance Force and have a whole chapter that completely stunts the pacing so that we can learn about their backstory and what the bar was used for. I know, that'd make it my game of the year. Now, there is a logical reason for why they may have done this. Myself and the guys have speculated.
When you say you and the guys, you mean the internet, don't you?
Yeah. We've speculated that perhaps it pertains to simply political correctness. Maybe the woke brigade have ruined yet another incredible IP. No, I'm kidding, of course. But that could be why. Perhaps something about Goblin's Bar insinuates some sort of racial stereotype. I'm not really sure what that could be, but
it's the only reasonable thing I can think of as to why they would actively choose to remove somewhere that's been a pretty recognisable staple of Sector 8 since 1997, especially when the rest remains completely intact.
But it gets stranger. I've not been able to find really anybody online talking about this. I found a fan-made interior, which is pretty fun that someone cares enough to make this. I mean, I'm also a fellow Goblin's Bar enjoyer, so well done. But I did find this Reddit comment from Ave369 replying to a thread asking whether people had an issue with not being able to freely explore the upper plate of Midgar in Remake, to which they respond, "It absolutely does bother me. I thought I'll be able to have a drink at the Goblin's Bar, or sleep in a theatre during a play of Loveless," which based for the latter, but I too would have liked to have gone inside Goblin's Bar, to see what it was all about, what makes it tick. I found this other post on livestream.net that says, "Let us all have a moment of silence for Goblins/Goblin's Bar. While I massively appreciate the redesign of Loveless Street, I was surprised that Goblin's Bar was nowhere to be found. Here is hoping that Goblin's Bar appears in some other location and that it will be themed after the Goblin enemy with the special drink being named Goblin Punch. Make it happen, Square." Goblin's Punch, of course, being the ability you can learn from fighting goblins on Goblin Island. It's also something the maker of that fan-made Goblin's Bar interior thought up too, because they included it here, although it's a punch machine for prizes, which honestly is much cooler. Now, I would have been able to put this to bed as either something they don't believe is necessary or something they felt they had to change for offensive reasons. However, Crisis Core Reunion is a thing, and for the longest time, we never got a clear shot of Goblin's Bar. It was always up in the air as to whether it would feature in the game. Given they are essentially saying Crisis Core events happened in the Remake universe, something that also keeps me up at night, sometimes screaming in fear, you'd think maybe they'd want Reunion to fit into the Remake universe, and so Goblin's Bar is nowhere to be seen, especially if it was removed from Remake as a conscious effort to stop using the name. But they didn't. Goblin's Bar is in Crisis Core Reunion. We have confirmation here in this footage posted online by various content creators, which begs the ultimate question. Why is it not in Remake then? If it was for a reason of offense or them thinking it needed to be gone for meta reasons, then it wouldn't be in Crisis Core Reunion, but it is. So what caused them to take it out of Remake? It's also interesting to note that Reunion isn't just a basic remaster of Crisis Core. They've adjusted major aspects of the game's visuals to better resemble Remake. Obviously, the layout of Loveless Avenue looks like the original Crisis Core because Square Enix aren't going to put that much work in. And yes, the characters still animate like they're on a PSP, which is endlessly funny when the character models look so good now. But when it comes down to Goblin's Bar, they've changed the font of the sign. They've changed the actual layout of the front of the building, and other aspects of Loveless Avenue now much more accurately resemble Remake. It's like they've based this Goblin's Bar redesign on a remake version that does not exist. It seems like such a small detail, but the more you ponder on this question, the more none of it makes any sense. Am I losing my mind? Is Goblin's Bar a deeper part of the remake timeline's lore than we think? Is the reason we never got to go inside because it was always something far more sinister than we could have imagined? It's destroyed in Final Fantasy VII OG, but in Remake, the Costa del Sol bar, which stands in its place, remains unscathed after the destruction of the first reactor. In this timeline, Goblin's Bar wouldn't have been destroyed in the first reactor bombing. Is this why it's changed? Is there something deeper, something linked to the alternate timelines, to the return of Zack? Maybe a similar thing to why there's a different stamp mascot at the end during Zack's victory to the one we see across the main game. Is it possible that in Zack's universe, Goblin's Bar exists, but in the remake universe, it doesn't? And what would the reason for that be? You might call me crazy, a fool for even daring to dream that this means something more, but Goblin's Bar is far too special to me. I never even got to know it properly. I never got to sit inside and have a pint with a goblin, or a man named Goblin, before it was taken from me, for seemingly no reason. Strangely too, upon doing research, Goblin's Bar is not in the first soldier recreation of Sector 8 either, but the Loveless Theatre remains, as does 8th Street Cafe, which, again, is part of Remake, not the OG or Crisis Core. And this hurts even more because in First Soldier, you can enter the Loveless Theatre. If Goblin's Bar were here, maybe we would have been able to go inside too. Sadly, it's not, because of Kitase and Nomura's harmful agenda against Goblin's Bar, and against me personally. I suppose this mystery may remain unsolved. We may never know what Goblin's Bar is, why the grammar changed between 1997 and 2007, why the bar was removed from First Soldier and Final Fantasy VII Remake, and what it was actually all for. I think the telling factor will be if the bar appears in Ever Crisis, the classical style remake of the OG and compilation for mobiles coming, well, maybe never. If it's in Ever Crisis, I will be pretty shocked, but it would also show incredible consistency with when it's removed from new projects. Remake and First Soldier fit into the remake timeline, so it's removed. Ever Crisis and Reunion fall into the original timeline, or maybe the alternate reality Zack timeline, and so it remains. Maybe it really is a timeline thing after all. God, I don't know anymore. And to top this all off, the Oxford Word of the Year for 2022 is Goblin Mode. Now forget for a moment that is definitely two separate words and take some time to consider what this could mean. The world knows. The powers that be know about this, and it's only time before their facade comes crashing down. I suppose until the remake trilogy is completed and the developers answer for their crimes, this may be the closest thing we will ever have to entering Goblin's Bar.